it? Oh, that's the wrong show. Welcome.
This
Now
is
we've got
a
another
new one.
show. This is a new one. Normally I say, how's it internet? So you try that.
How's it internet?
Yeah, so how's it is South Africa's way of saying
How's it going? Hello.
Yeah. You almost a natural. Anyhow, welcome to AzureConnect, the only Azure show
At Ignite. So
at
far.
Ignite, where we cover what's happening in the cloud, where we're going with the cloud, and also because this is Ignite, we've got an Ignite edition bumper news pack show. My name is Alistair Pugin. I'd like to welcome.
And I'm Warren Toit, and our guest.
Gabriel Gumbs with StealthBits.
That's awesome.
So on today's show, before we go into In the News, we'll be covering security. Security is a big thing for not only the data centers, but also what's happening on-prem and that whole move to the cloud. So it's important to know what's happening with your data. And I think on that note, we're going to cross over to Warren, who's going to take you through some of the new stuff that's been talked about.
That's right. Okay, but there's so much. Really so much. Ignite is amazing. So there have been a bunch of announcements when it comes to Azure, and one of the really cool ones that everybody's been waiting for is data. Like let's start with blueprints. Okay.
Right.
So imagine you have multiple subscriptions, pretty much around the world. Okay, and you need to keep these subscriptions in line. You need to keep them compliant. You don't want the admins of those particular subscriptions making changes.
So what is a subscription?
Yes, a subscription, a tenant in Office
Is it a
365
tenant?
terms, technically.
Oh, okay.
So your subscription in Azure would be where you deploy all your resource groups.
All right,
essentially.
gotcha.
Right. So you now need to keep all of these subscriptions. So, I mean, we see it sometimes where there's a subscription per EA, and sometimes a customer will have many EAs in each country. So the idea is all of those will be separate. So here you can start deploying those across those subscriptions. It's going to be great. So blueprints are going to pretty much allow you to scale out incredibly quickly, but remain compliant at the same time.
Gabe, from your perspective, being a product vendor, do you have a lot of customers getting confused when it comes to what they're doing with their licensing in your space? Because I know you push product and it would be you need this specific SKU or this specific enterprise plan in order to consume product from your perspective. Do you see that?
It can get confusing for some, certainly more so for others. And at the scales that you're talking about, that enterprise scale,
Yeah, it's huge.
It is not just immediately confusing. A lot of times there are separate IT departments. They might be siloed for very good reasons. Sometimes you have one division of business that needs to move much faster than the others, right? They're the ones that generate revenue, and that is somehow technology backed, and those folks need to move faster than others too. And so it can get confusing for the organization as a whole to manage that, very much so.
Exactly. So it's a pretty good one. Guys have been waiting for it, and they did a demo on stage, and it was like 4 or 5 clicks. I mean, obviously, building the actual blueprint takes a little bit longer than that, but deploying it was really
You only
quick.
have to do that once, I assume.
Right. Okay. Then there was a bunch of other ones. App service announcements where they're running Apache Tomcat now, which is a pretty good one. For us techies, we know Apache Tomcat, yes. Then functions, runtime 2.0. We've got Python support in functions as well, which is also great. We've got
So this is
services.
from the dev side, not the IT pro side
So-
of Azure.
Essentially what happens is we just bundled all the Azure announcements together. But the idea here is that there are a couple of announcements, like if we have to go for the IoT side of things.
Yeah.
Okay, IoT is huge. And one of the biggest problems with IoT is
Security. It is
100%.
the biggest problem.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So they went and Microsoft went and they gave us Sphere, right, which secures IoT devices. And today they launched a Sphere Dev Kit, which allows people to take advantage of the Sphere platform and basically secure IoT. So it's taking away those problems.
So that is significant for a couple of reasons. Just to my ear,
Yeah,
coming
for
also
sure.
from, in the past life, I did a lot of application security work, and one of the biggest challenges is, developers we're training them better these days, but the truth is, mostly.
I'm going to use that.
All of my
I'm going
deference
to
out there,
use
I
that.
apologize. But the truth is, we need them to be excellent developers and not necessarily, security
architects, yeah.
professionals. Right. Sure, there should be some principles that they understand and know and follow and so forth, but by being able to give them a toolkit that already builds in a lot of those security components to it, we remove a lot of the friction between having final products that are already secure versus not. And IoT is certainly a space where security is going to continue to grow. And we see that in our customer base as well too. A number of them are worried about bringing those things onto their networks, and they're not even in the consumer side of the world, but there are a lot more enterprise IoT devices that are making its way out. So it was one thing when I'm not going to call any names, but it was one thing when a thermostat may have sold 100,000 devices that were insecure, but...
Well, that's what Satya said this morning. So Satya said this morning that there are 9 billion IoT devices on the planet.
Including the one fish tank
Yes.
in Vegas
That got hacked.
that got hacked because they replaced the thermostat in it, right?
There you go.
Or a pump or something, and it was Wi-Fi enabled, and we switch it on, and the next thing you know,
I replaced an electronic toothbrush not too long ago, and the new version, it's got Bluetooth. I'm like, why? I don't really need that.
To remind you when to
Hold on
brush.
a second. Hold on a second. I have a Bluetooth toothbrush as well.
But
I
why?
okay. It is telling me how well I am brushing.
I feel like I'm good at that at this point. My niece might need it. She's 4, but I feel like I'm pretty good at
And
that.
it also, like my phone will beep when the head is in need of replacement.
Fair enough.
It's like a car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take it in for a service. I'm with you. I don't need to know when I have to brush my teeth.
I don't know. Because here's the problem, right? If I somehow make my way into your network, whether it's a corporate one or a private one, and that device has, as we know many ITs do, insecurities, flaws in it, then that's going to allow me to pivot inside of your network and do all kinds of other fun
Yeah,
stuff.
for sure.
Isn't it? Yeah.
You've got literally the door
Because
open
you haven't learned how to brush your teeth yet.
I just
Well, now with
hacked
Azure
into-
Sphere,
Now with Azure Sphere.
my toothbrush is safe.
There you go.
So just another word of how to hack into a CEO's notebook
his
is
toothbrush.
through his toothbrush.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's just scary. What else do you have for us, Ross?
Right, so we can keep going. I think, look, there were a lot of Azure Stack announcements as well, which is pretty great.
Hold on, Azure Stack.
Yes, bringing the cloud to you. So, look, Stack has been out for just over a year.
Yeah, but Stack is just the UI.
Well, it's the actual device as well. So, I mean, you're bringing Azure on-prem.
Dull cloud in a box.
Yeah.
Bringing Azure on-prem.
That is what you're doing.
This is interesting.
So the idea here is, look, Stack's been around for about a year, but unfortunately it was launched with a bit of a promise that you could have as much of Azure as possible, okay? And
Which wasn't very much. At the
it
time.
wasn't very much, no. So as a result today, they launched the Azure Firewall is going to be available, Azure Security Center is going to be available, Event Hubs is going to be available, and they're basically expanding the ability to now put 16 nodes, okay, into Azure Stack. So you can have more nodes now, which will then allow you to support blockchain as well. And some of those
Can we just
workloads.
stop? I don't want to hear any more conversation about blockchain and everything else that goes with
Well,
it.
agreed. It's a buzzword. We will stop there. However, your Azure Stack will
I
support it.
might disagree, but that's okay.
Why? So tell me why you think blockchain is what everyone professes it to be.
I don't profess it to be much of anything, but I certainly am not ready to write it off as having some capabilities that might be quite useful in the near future. I haven't seen much in the way of applicability today that I'm excited about.
Yeah.
I know many others have, but I certainly see promise.
Well, look, from a blockchain perspective, you've got a distributed ledger.
Right.
It's great, not only transactionally, but the immutability of a patient record.
That's right.
So healthcare is actually the place that's being lit up right now. We've got some friends in the space that's driving blockchain as the immutability storage
Yes.
for case file management.
Integrity has always been at the core of security, and that does bring with it a lot of applicability to your point, healthcare, financial services.
I think the problem is more that, so people, obviously they associate blockchain with Bitcoin. Okay, that's like pretty much the biggest association.
Right,
It's
which is
obviously-
good and bad,
it's
right?
moving away, but so many people I've seen, what they do is they'll walk up to me while I'm talking at a conference or whatever the case may be, is and they'll say, we want to use the blockchain. And you'll
The
go,
blockchain.
The blockchain. It's like the cloud.
It's
we
like
want to
the
use the
James.
blockchain. And you go, okay, well, what would you like to use blockchain for? Beep, 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 beep. And do you see what I'm saying?
I
So
do.
Unfortunately, they don't really know what it is that they're wanting to use from it.
Right.
And then you go ahead and you explain, this is what blockchain technology will do for your business. And then they're like, okay, we're nowhere
All right,
close.
that's enough. No more blockchain.
Sorry, yes.
Moving
good.
on.
All right, okay.
Moving on.
Cognitive speech services is now GA.
Wait,
So
say that
turning
Cognitive speech.
turning text to speech. Now
Beautiful.
GA, super, that's some great stuff.
Skype translate.
again. Yes.
Like that.
Yes. Yes.
That
yes.
will use that in the back end, yeah, for sure. All right, then, huge one, your space as well, okay, because it's obviously, it was actually in the Office 365 keynote, okay, Microsoft 365 keynote. Virtual desktop is back.
I heard
in
that.
Azure.
I heard that.
VDI is
Yes.
back, okay.
Why is it in
Windows
my
The
space?
fourth time,
Because
fifth,
it's-
how I lost count.
This is productivity.
It's like Express Route, where they say sell Express Route, and then they say
No,
don't sell
so
Express
this is productivity, all right? You can now spin up VDI, so virtual desktop instances, okay, inside of Azure, Windows 10, boom, go.
Why?
So, okay, think of every client that uses Citrix.
I don't understand
All right.
why they still use it, though.
So, when it comes to compliant environments, okay, and people who use terminals, so like for instance, call center environments, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to spend a gazillion on like 1,000 Dells or whatever the case may be is. What they'd rather do is they buy these little Wise terminals or whatever
Are
the
Wise
case may be, is,
terminals still a
and
thing?
then they connect to these VDI
But
instances. Yeah,
that's
so
my
they are.
question.
Yeah,
Are Wise terminals still a thing?
they are.
Well,
In
so
this, I say in this country, in our country,
I'd say
Africa?
Africa.
I can say stateside, secure computing in a sense that having environments that I use to connect to critical parts of my environment
Yeah.
are very much a thing, right? So before I connect to a domain controller, I don't just do that from my desktop. I don't do that from my laptop. I have some secure computing environment that I only use to make that connection.
Yeah.
I don't need thousands of those, obviously,
Yeah, sure.
but there's still a need for similar type technologies. Now, you mentioned having Azure on-prem. I could see where spinning up VDIs in
Yeah, but that
Your
doesn't
private
necessarily
cloud.
mean it's coming. Well, look.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
it's
I'm
in
getting
Azure.
ahead of
It's in
even-
Azure now,
Yeah.
in cloud, and it's available.
So
and we can
Stack
use
is
it.
really there to give you a feel for what Azure is like in the cloud. That's my perception. So it gives you the UI. It's not going to give you the racehorse that is Azure. It's going to give you that time to spend and start falling in love with Azure and then moving to the cloud.
You see,
But-
it also enables Azure in specific regions as well that have sort of data sovereignty laws and those kinds of things. So, for instance, if you had to choose a country like Kenya, okay, Kenya, they probably won't get a Microsoft data center, right?
No. Well, we've got the two in South Africa.
However, even if you're storing your data in South Africa, it's not in Kenya. So as a result, it's not, they've had problems with that. The Kenyan government has a problem with that. So you would deploy Stack there.
But Kenya doesn't have infrastructure to deploy Stack anyway.
Well,
That's a different problem.
Well, Stack is
That's
Stack is OEM. So Stack is
They still need proper uninterruptible power, and
Yeah.
Kenya doesn't have that.
Well, we could use Germany then. Germany has very
Yeah.
strict sovereignty
yes.
rules.
Well,
around
but
it.
they do have a data center. I mean,
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're getting a new one.
Yeah.
It's no longer run by IT systems. The mistake that Microsoft made when they first deployed
Exactly.
ADC. Yeah. Next up on the
Right,
list
next
was
up on the list is dun dun dun. Managed instances inside of Azure for SQL. It is basically SQL Server in the cloud. Okay, so you don't have the limitations that you would have had when moving to platform as a service SQL. Okay, so SQL DB.
well,
So
it's
managed
renting a
instances-
database. That's
Well,
what it is.
no, this is actually the servers now. So it's essentially a server, SQL Server in the cloud.
Yeah.
So it has the same capabilities as your on-premises SQL instance. Or so people who wanted to, let's say, move their databases to Azure, they would install a VM and then put SQL on top of it,
Yeah.
so that it gives you full functionality.
Right.
Now you've achieved feature parity in platform as a service with managed
So
instances.
it's still
Correct.
renting a
Yeah.
database.
Yeah, and then as a result, we've also got data migration. Azure Data Migration now pretty much handles most DBs. So Postgres, MySQL,
Will that move
all of
data
them.
from on-prem right up?
That's it. Click of a button. Microsoft is making it incredibly easy.
All right,
for you
is
to
that
move
it for the news? Because I'm a
And
bit
that is
bored
it,
now.
yes.
All right.
I'll tell you, that's where most of my customers see a lot of pain, though, is prior to that move process is understanding what it is they're even moving first.
Yes.
Right? Who has access to that? Is there sensitive information that before I just move it? I'd be a little careful before I just click that one button and just boot everything up if I still don't know what it is and who owns it.
Definitely. It's the biggest
Yeah.
problem when moving to Azure.
For sure.
Yep.
So I want to talk security because that's why you're here.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would have just been myself and Warren.
Right.
And no pretty. You know?
Well,
Yeah,
So from a
you've raised the bar.
You got the little flower. We had to mention the flower. Yeah?
the flower did need
So
mention.
I want to talk a bit about security. So working for one of the companies that actually worry about security on behalf of the rest of the world,
Yes.
and your very colorful background,
Yes.
because you jumped fence a few years ago.
I did.
Where do you see security going? I mean, moving to the cloud, I can't physically touch my data center anymore. You know, I mean, that's scary for any IT manager.
Yes.
What sort of trends are you seeing? I mean, you've been here today, 30,000 people have walked through this hallway. Where do you see security going?
I think primarily the trend that technology is going, because we're always following it. We have to, right? I don't architect security solutions for technologies that don't exist, right? I certainly do engineer new security technologies to address problems that arise as a result of new technologies. And we've talked a very long time about the borders going away. That's going to continue to happen, right? You can't touch those things out in the cloud. So those borders break down. So I can't just put in perimeter security for those types of things any longer. You talk about some of that cloud now coming back on-prem. Well, the problem is I've already blurred the lines between where that isn't any longer, and some of that's going to move back and forth. So I have to take security down a level, and I have to start looking at security at the data level, right? Because ultimately that was always our goal, was protecting the data protection. Hell, they put it right in the name of the regulations, GDPR, like data protection, right? We put it right in the names of some of the regulations. It's right there.
Data
And
Protection Act of the UK.
there it is.
Which is the GDPR 1.0.
Right. California just passed their own a few weeks ago, right? They have their own data protection one now too. Almost guaranteed to make it through the rest of the country, much like their original privacy rules replicated across all the states as well too. Almost guaranteed. So we see it pushing down to the data level. That is absolutely where security is going. That is not to say all of your perimeter things are, you can turn off your firewalls tomorrow, but they certainly don't offer the same level of protection. Again, I now have one button, I can move all of my data. But what is all of that data? A petabyte of data is a lot to go through.
And how are you moving it?
How am I? So what's
You had to
in
go
there?
to the trolley.
What's in the
Yeah.
trolley?
The trolley.
We
We
didn't even
forgot
talk
about
about
the
the trolley. We'll get to the trolley. But before you just put that data on the trolley and send it out, you've got to stop them at the door. Well, what's inside that trolley? I don't know. I got a little financial data, maybe a little personal information data, maybe a little healthcare data. All right, good. So tell me more about that data. Who owns that data? I don't really know. Well, who has access to that data? Not sure. How'd they get access? I don't know. Can I revoke access? Do they need access? Are they using that access? That's where security's going. That is absolutely where security's going.
How do you fix it?
You push it down to the data level. You answer those questions I just asked. You have to answer the question, what's on that trolley? What data is in there? Well, sir, it's this, and this. I have 10 petabytes of financial data, 2 petabytes of health information, and that information is owned by this part of the organization for this purpose. It is accessed by these individuals, and I have controls in place to ensure that only those individuals are able to access it, and revoke that access when necessary. We review that access on a regular basis. Security has to push its way down to the data level because technology's just made it too easy to move that data around. Moving to the cloud was the same thing with the IoT, right? Buzzword and blockchain, a buzzword. Well, it's not a buzzword any longer, is it? It's here, it's here now,
That's true, yeah.
and I can move that data around easy, seamlessly, and Microsoft is just making that easier every day. And when that data moves around, how do I still know what it is, right? That data moves from here to here. It has that that classification of that data needs to follow it. When that sensitive data moves from your on-premise environments to that cloud environment, I still need to know what that data is. That necessity doesn't magically go away because it's now in the cloud. Some might argue that necessity increases because of that lack of physical control. Some might argue that that necessity increases.
So take me through a day in the life of what you actually do. I mean, it's interesting listening to your background early on and moving from corporate America into a product space where you guys have to be one step ahead of what the customer's actually doing in order to maintain and innovate on top of the product that you're working with.
Yes, but even more importantly, on every single day, I have to be very in tune to what my customers are doing, because that's the thing that usually tips me off to where they're heading, is what they're doing right now. And so there's a typical day for Gabe involves a number of things, but a lot of it is spent talking to customers. A lot of it is spent understanding what they're doing and the problems they're having. Before I can go in the room and I can grab some of my smartest guys and we can create all kinds of technology. But if it's not solving your problem, you don't blockchain. But is it solving your problem? All right, then you don't need it. So a lot of my day is spent doing that. And in terms of from a background perspective, it's what I did as a practitioner in a more limited environment. So I would do that for one employer. And now I do that across many organizations, right? So I spend a lot of time talking with my customers, understanding how they're using data, understanding how they're creating data, understanding the type of data they have, understanding where it needs those protections, where they currently have protections. Understanding, for example, if they tell me tomorrow, if 50 of them tell me tomorrow, I heard that announcement, I want the trolley, I want to move that data, then the thing I need to then do is understand where the limitations to the protections in that environment are and start architecting solutions for exactly that.
Do you differentiate between structured and unstructured content?
And semi-structured, yes.
All right.
I absolutely do. Because some of those things are easier to both control as well as to even locate, right? Unstructured data, it's difficult to control in a number of ways. It's everywhere. It's legitimately everywhere. It's on your surface. You save it on NAS devices. It's everywhere. Structured data slightly more controlled. I expect it to be in certain places, but then understanding how I got that data and what type of data it is becomes issues too. And semi-structured has both of those challenges as well too, right? When I say semi-structured, I mean JSONs, XMLs, even email counts as unstructured, right? So I do differentiate those things, if only because the end controls are different. The policies ultimately the same, which is to say these data types, I'm just going to pick a random one, European citizen data, we talk about GDPR, they have these controls because the council has said these are the controls. But now how I apply those controls across structured versus unstructured, how I locate it in structured versus unstructured environments differs. In unstructured environments, I don't have to worry about OCRing anything, right? I don't have to worry about data existing in images and in PDFs, et cetera. In unstructured environment, I do. So I do have to differentiate.
And how long does this all take?
How long does it take to dig a hole?
No, well, you see, this is my point. Okay, so this is my point, is something that we deal with daily.
Yes.
Okay, is people want to go to the cloud, they want to go to the cloud now.
Right.
Okay. Or alternatively, their SAN is full.
Right.
Okay, their SAN is full.
Yes.
They have to now spend a couple of million or whatever the case may be is, a couple 100,000, getting a new SAN.
Yes.
Okay. Or they can move to the cloud. So we have this rush that comes in.
Yes.
Okay. New data center opens up, people want to go. Okay. Clearly they haven't had these policies in. They're not there.
Yes.
Okay? Now they call you.
Yep.
And they say, come, we need to do this properly.
Focus. That's my answer all the time. I said it somewhat jokingly, facetiously.
Can you stage it?
That's the focus. You have a large amount of data. When we understand what that data is, again, going back to understanding the sensitivity of that data, then I can stage it based on the criticality of that data. This is business data that we need we need to keep the lights on. This is how we generate revenue as a business. Because most businesses these days, regardless of what you do, if the world's largest retailer is very much a technology company also, right? They maximize those profits based on data. So, they have business data. So do we want to move that first? We need to answer those questions. Or do we want to move just the sensitive information, our intellectual property, or whatever the case is? The answer is focus. You can't and don't want to move all of it all at once. That just doesn't make sense. No. You're just going to replicate your problems in the new environment.
100%.
It is. How much of that data is stale? Do I need to move all of it?
Exactly.
Almost every single one of my customers has stale data. And I give them a way to clean that up. But without that way to clean it up, how much of that data am I moving? Because I've ran out of space. So now I'm just spending money.
I need 2 trolleys.
And one of those trolleys is data I haven't touched in 5 years. It starts looking like the average American garage. It's like, what is this? When did I get this? And Grandma gave you a turkey based there 20
Do you
years
see
ago.
yourself as complementary to what Microsoft is doing in the information security?
Absolutely.
And I'm not talking about traditional sort of, here's a firewall and I can block ports, because information security is very different to infrastructure
Much more
security.
difficult.
Yeah.
So are you seeing Microsoft giving partners enough space to expand, to scale on what Microsoft is doing with stuff like Compliance Manager and Azure Information Protection, which is now Microsoft Information Protection?
All right. I believe that there's some work to do in terms of being able to enable the ecosystem a bit more, just bluntly speaking, different and varied access to that data inside of the environment, so that we can help our customers understand it and use it, etc. One of the biggest concerns that my customers had several months ago was, Azure didn't keep a lot in the way of logs.
Yeah.
Right? So they've addressed that problem a little bit.
Changed. Yeah.
Right? It's changed. But being able to if they had simply opened that up to the ecosystem, I could have solved that problem in short order. I understand why there's some things you may want to do, not want to do, but to your original question, we're very much in sync with what Microsoft does along these lines, and I do think that there are a number of things that Microsoft could do that would better allow the ecosystem to serve their customers.
And what are those?
Access to that data is honestly it. I mean, and I'm not talking the end user data. I'm talking about what happens inside of Azure, right? So what has changed? Who's getting access to things? What are the principles that have been added to the environment?
I suppose they make it as transparent as possible.
Not nearly as transparent as you think it should be. Trust me on this one. Like, I don't have enough insight into the activity of security principles today. The data is there, but it is not easy for my customers to be able to make sense of and use, right? Things like Hello for Business. I don't know if any announcements were made on that.
Not that I know of.
But understanding how authentication is shifting from traditional mechanisms and hybrid ones. So now I'm blind. A lot of my customers haven't moved to Hello yet because they understand very well the authentication activity in their existing environments, and without being able to see that also in Azure, they're not quite comfortable and ready yet to do those things.
Did you see the Surface? Thinking about authentication with the 2 fingers?
I missed it.
You missed it. Okay, so what happens is, I'm just segueing here.
Geeks geeks out.
Okay, so Surface.
That's not a segue, by the way.
The new Surface.
That's a squirrel.
That's just a squirrel.
The new Surface Hub, right?
Yes.
You can have 2 people. Okay, they walk up to it. One puts their fingerprint down, logs them in on the one side. Another person comes in, puts their fingerprint down, and logs them in on the second side. And they can then copy stuff between the profiles via the Surface Hub. So they basically authenticate Windows, hello, thanks very much, and they can both use the hub at the same time. It's incredible.
That is interesting.
I digress. Yes.
All right. Anyhow, Gabe, thanks for being on the show.
Pleasure having me.
So if people want to find you on the interwebs and the Twitteratis,
They can find me at Gabriel Gumbs on Twitter. They can find me on LinkedIn, Gabriel Gumbs.
yeah, we did some research. You got quite a following there.
Sure.
A few people, yeah. I mean, I'm
Couple thousand.
I'm not counting.
couple thousand.
Couple thousand.
Couple.
It's like,
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's
I'm way down here. And of
All
course,
right.
you can find StealthBits at stealthbits.com and at StealthBits.
Yeah. So for any security stuff, they can come knocking at your door.
By all means, I mean, I welcome it. In fact, people reach out to me on Twitter all the time to ask me varied questions on security topics, and for sure.
and you answer.
I do answer. I do.
All right, well, thanks for being on the show. That's a wrap for AzureConnect Ignite Edition. You can find us on...
You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on the interwebs, AzureConnect.co.za, or you can find us at AzureConnect on
So
Twitter.
that's everything /AzureConnect. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're not on LinkedIn. We don't roll there yet.
No, not yet.
All right.
Not yet.
Well, thanks a lot. And
We don't have suits.
We'll talk. I know a guy.
it's been great being here with Warren. You want any last words?
I just love Ignite. Ignite's amazing. I'm happy to be here. The weather is incredible.
Keep it in Orlando,
Hey,
please.
man. Sure.
All right, cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.